My mother didn't whisper it. She didn't hesitate. She said it like it was nothing more than a scheduling detail. "I gave the money you sent me to your brother," she said calmly, spooning mashed potatoes onto her plate. "He needed it for the house." The fork slipped from my hand and hit the plate with a sharp, hollow sound. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. "The money," I said, slowly, each word measured, "that I sent you." She nodded. $200,000, you remember. You told me to keep it safe." She smiled faintly like a woman proud of herself for solving a problem. My brother didn't look up. He kept eating, jaw working steadily, as if this was all old news, as if this dinner wasn't detonating my entire understanding of my family. I was 33 years old. I was living in a rented apartment I could barely afford, and the money I had saved for over a decade, the money I trusted my mother to hold because I believed family meant safety, was gone. Given away. To him. "I don't understand," I said. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "You said you were holding it for me, for when I was ready to buy." My mother sighed, already annoyed. "You're still renting." He needed a house now. My brother finally glanced up, irritation flickering across his face. "You'll get there eventually," he said. "I have kids." I stared at him. I had paid off student loans alone. I had worked through weekends, holidays, Christmas mornings. I had skipped vacations, postponed relationships, said no to everything so I could build something stable. And they had decided I could wait. The room smelled like roast chicken and gravy. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. I became hyper-aware of my breathing, the tightness in my chest, the way my fingers had gone cold. "You didn't ask me," I said. My mother shrugged. "I didn't think I needed to." That sentence landed harder than the theft. Not because of the money, because of what it revealed. I had not been consulted. I had not been respected. I had not been considered. I pushed my chair back slightly. "You gave him my future." My mother frowned. "Don't be dramatic." There it was, the phrase she had used my entire life whenever I reacted to unfairness. My brother wiped his mouth with a napkin. "You'll be fine. You always are." That was the role they had assigned me long ago. The one who didn't need help. The one who could absorb loss quietly. The one whose sacrifices didn't count because they never inconvenienced anyone else. I stood up. "I need air," I said. No one followed me. Outside, the night was cold and sharp. I leaned against my car and tried to breathe through the nausea. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my mother. "You're overreacting. We're family." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was finally clear. Family to them meant access without permission. As I drove home, memories began rearranging themselves. The time my birthday was forgotten because my brother had a crisis. The promotion I never celebrated because his divorce took precedence. The way my mother always asked about my finances, not with concern, but with entitlement. I had trusted her because she was my mother. I had trusted him because he was my brother. And that trust had just cost me everything I had worked for. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the lease renewal notice on my kitchen counter. Rent going up again. $200,000 gone. But something else was forming beneath the shock. Something sharper than grief. Questions. Why had my mother felt so comfortable doing this? Why had my brother accepted the money without a word to me? And why did I suddenly remember my grandmother warning me years ago never to mix love and money? I opened my laptop and pulled up old bank records, transfer confirmations, messages, proof. I hadn't sent a gift. I had sent my future. And someone had decided it belonged to them. That was the night I stopped crying. Because betrayal doesn't end when you discover it. It ends when you decide what you're willing to lose next. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face at the dinner table. Calm, certain, as if she had moved a piece on a board she believed belonged to her. By 6 a.m, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, coffee-untouched bank statements spread out like evidence from a crime scene. The transfer receipt stared back at me, dated 2 years earlier. The message attached to it was still there. "For safekeeping, for my future home." Her words. I scrolled further. Text messages, emails, casual reassurances every time I asked how the money was doing. "Still there. Don't worry, I'm your mother." I felt something tighten behind my ribs. Not anger yet. Something colder. Confirmation. I went to work on autopilot. My coworkers talked about weekend plans, school pickups, Thanksgiving flights. Someone complained about mortgage rates. I nodded in the right places, smiled when expected, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the dinner again and again, searching for the moment I should have seen this coming. It had always been this way. My brother needed help with tuition. My parents dipped into savings meant for both of us. He needed help after a failed business idea. They refinanced. When I asked for help with my first apartment, my mother told me independence builds character. I believed her. At lunch, my phone buzzed, a message from my brother. "You're really upset over this? Mom was just helping?" Helping. I stared at the word until the letters blurred, helping him by hurting me. I typed, then erased, then typed again. "Did you know she was using my money?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "She said you wouldn't mind. You're good with money." There it was, the justification that made everything else possible. I didn't respond. That evening, my mother called. "You didn't answer your brother," she said. "No," greeting, no pause. "I'm processing," I replied. She sighed dramatically. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I closed my eyes. "You took $200,000 I earned and gave it away." "For family," she snapped. "For him," I corrected. There was a brief silence, then her voice softened, dangerous in its familiarity. "You always land on your feet. He doesn't." "That's because no one lets him fall," I said. She bristled. "Don't you dare blame me for your brother's struggles." "I'm not blaming you," I said. "I'm asking why my struggles don't count." Another pause. "You're not struggling," she said. "You're just impatient." That word again, as if waiting long enough would turn theft into virtue. I hung up before she could say anything else. That night I opened a folder on my computer and labeled it Simply Records. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet. I was planning clarity. Over the next few days, things shifted subtly. My mother stopped calling. My brother sent a few defensive messages, then nothing. Silence settled in, heavy and deliberate like a tactic. At work, my manager called me into her office. "You seem distracted," she said gently. "I am," I admitted. She nodded. "If you need time, take it." I thanked her, then surprised myself by asking a question I had never dared to ask before. "What would it take," I said slowly, "for me to move up here?" She raised an eyebrow. "You've never asked that." "I know." We talked for 20 minutes. Real numbers, real expectations, real possibilities. When I left her office, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From the realization that I had been shrinking myself to accommodate a family that never planned to accommodate me. That weekend, I visited my grandmother's old house. It had been sold years ago, but the neighborhood still smelled the same. Cut grass, old trees, distance from drama. She had warned me once quietly while my mother was in the kitchen. Never let them hold what you can't afford to lose. I hadn't understood then. I did now. On Sunday night, my mother texted, "We need to talk, come over." I hesitated, then replied, "Tomorrow." I arrived at her house the next evening to find my brother already there. He sat on the couch, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother hovered, nervous energy radiating off her. "This is an ambush," I said flatly. "No," my mother said. "This is family." I stayed standing. "I want to know exactly when you gave him the money," I said. My brother looked away. "Answer her," my mother said sharply. "It was last spring," he muttered. "Last spring. The same month my rent increased. The same month I asked my mother if the money was still untouched." My hands clenched at my sides. "You lied to me," I said. My mother lifted her chin. "I protected you from stress." "You stole from me," I replied. My brother stood up. "I didn't force her." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "You accepted it." Silence filled the room. "I need it back," I said. My mother laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Don't be ridiculous. It's already in the house." I nodded slowly. Because that was the moment something inside me clicked into place. They weren't sorry. They weren't afraid. They thought this was over. They thought I would swallow it. I picked up my bag. "This isn't finished," I said. As I walked out, my mother called after me, her voice sharp with something close to panic. "You wouldn't dare turn this into a legal issue." I paused at the door. I hadn't planned to, until she said that. I didn't go home after leaving my mother's house. I drove. No destination, no music, just the sound of tires against asphalt and my own thoughts finally lining up into something coherent. $200,000 was not an accident. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision made because they believed I would never challenge it. That belief was the real inheritance I had been handed. By the time I pulled into my apartment parking lot, the shock had settled into something sharper. I opened my laptop and searched for one name. A lawyer. The woman who answered the phone the next morning sounded calm, efficient, and uninterested in family excuses. She asked questions I hadn't thought to ask: dates, messages, intent. "Did you ever tell your mother the money was a gift?" she asked. "No," I said immediately. "I said she was holding it." "Do you have that in writing?" "Yes." There was a pause, then good. That single word did more for my nervous system than any apology ever could. We met 2 days later in an office that smelled faintly of coffee and paper. I laid everything out. The transfers, the texts, the dinner. The casual way my mother had admitted what she did. The lawyer listened without interrupting. "This is not a loan," she said finally, "and it is not a gift. This is custodial holding." And she breached that. My throat tightened. So what does that mean? It means she said carefully that what your mother did was not just unethical. It was legally actionable. The word sat between us. Actionable. I didn't feel relief. I felt grief. Because some part of me had still hoped there was a version of this story where I could confront them, they would apologize, and things would return to normal. There was no normal to return to. That evening my brother called. "I heard you talk to a lawyer," he said, skipping any pretense. I leaned against my kitchen counter phone pressed to my ear. "Who told you?" "Mom," he snapped. "She's terrified." I laughed softly. "Good. You're really going to do this," he said. "Over money. Over trust," I corrected. "Over the fact that you live in a house bought with my future while I'm renewing a lease I can barely afford." "That's not fair," he said. "No," I replied. "It's accurate." He lowered his voice. "You're going to tear this family apart." I closed my eyes. "You mean I'm refusing to hold it together with my silence?" He hung up on me. That night my mother left 3 voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. First indignation, then bargaining, then guilt. I didn't respond. Instead, I reread old conversations. Moments I had brushed off at the time suddenly made sense. The way she always asked how much I had saved. The way she discouraged me from buying earlier. The way she insisted it was smarter to wait. She hadn't been protecting me. She had been positioning me. The next week my lawyer sent a formal demand letter. I watched my inbox like it might explode. My mother called within the hour. "You humiliated me," she cried. "Do you know how this looks?" I kept my voice steady. "How did it look when you took my money?" "That was different," she said. "I raised you. And I trusted you," I replied. "You're punishing me," she said. "No," I said quietly. "I am protecting myself." She sobbed. "I don't have that kind of money anymore." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. Then she said it. "There's more." My fingers tightened around the phone. "More what?" "I didn't just give him your money," she whispered. "I used some of it to help your father." My vision narrowed. "How much?" I asked. "I don't know," she said quickly. "It was all mixed together." The room felt suddenly too small. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You erased me." She started crying harder. "I never thought you'd find out." That sentence broke whatever was left. I hung up and called my lawyer immediately. Her voice sharpened as I explained. "That changes things," she said. "That expands liability." "What does that mean for my brother?" I asked. "It means," she said, "that the house may not be as secure as he thinks." For the first time, I felt something close to fear. Not for myself. For them. That weekend, my brother showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked angry, but beneath it, unsettled. "You're not going to take my house," he said. "I didn't give it to you," I replied. "You're being cruel," he snapped. I met his gaze. "You were comfortable when it was me suffering." He looked away. "I have kids," he said again, desperate. "And I had a future," I replied. He left without another word. As the door closed behind him, I realized something profound. They had always counted on my empathy to override my boundaries. They had mistaken my patience for permission. And now the tables were shifting. Because once money leaves the realm of emotion and enters the realm of law, family narratives stop working. And my family was about to learn that the hard way. The demand letter changed the temperature of everything. It wasn't loud. It didn't accuse. It didn't threaten. It simply laid out facts in clean, unemotional language. Dates, amounts, documentation, a deadline. My family had never responded well to facts. My mother stopped calling entirely. My brother sent a single text. "This is getting out of hand." I read it 3 times before replying. "It got out of hand when you took it." No answer came back. Instead, something else arrived. A letter from my father, handwritten. That alone made my stomach tighten. He had never written me letters. He was the quiet authority in the background, the one whose approval I chased without realizing it. The letter was short. "Your mother is devastated. This is tearing the family apart. We raised you better than this." I folded the paper carefully and placed it on the table. Raised me better than what? Better than asking where my money went. Better than expecting honesty. Better than refusing to be the family's silent solution. I didn't respond. At work, I found myself calmer than I had been in weeks. Focused. Efficient. It was as if naming the injustice had freed up space in my mind that had been occupied for years by confusion. My manager noticed. "You've been different," she said one afternoon, in a good way. I smiled faintly. I stopped waiting for permission. She nodded like she understood more than I had said. That night my lawyer called. "They responded," she said. My pulse quickened. "How?" "Your mother's attorney sent a reply. They acknowledge receipt. They dispute intent." I laughed without humor. Of course they do. "They claim the money was given with implied consent." I closed my eyes. "Based on what?" "Based on your relationship," she said, "which is vague by design." "What do we do next?" "We escalate," she said calmly. "We request discovery." The word landed with weight. Discovery meant records, bank accounts, transfers, the truth laid bare whether they liked it or not. "Do it," I said. There was a pause. You understand this will get ugly. It already is, I replied. That weekend, my mother broke her silence. She showed up at my apartment. I hadn't told her where I lived. My brother must have. She looked smaller than I remembered. Pale, exhausted, clutching her purse like a shield. Please, she said as soon as I opened the door. Let me explain. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quickly. I was trying to help everyone. Everyone but me, I replied. She flinched. You don't understand how much pressure I was under. Pressure from whom, I asked. She hesitated. From my father. He needed money for something, she said quietly. An investment that went wrong. My chest tightened. So you took mine. You had it, she said desperately. It was just sitting there. That sentence told me everything I needed to know. To her, my sacrifice looked like excess. You could have asked me, I said. She shook her head. You would have said no. I nodded slowly. You're right. She started crying. I thought I could fix it later. When I asked was later supposed to be, she had no answer. I can get some of it back, she said finally. If you drop this. How much, I asked. She looked away. Not all of it. I felt something settle in my chest, solid, unmoving. No, I said. Her head snapped up. What? No deals, I repeated. No half-truths, no favors. You're choosing money over family, she sobbed. I met her gaze. You already did. She covered her mouth, realization flickering too late. I trusted you, I said. You used that trust like it was yours to spend. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said quietly. I'm doing this so it never happens again. She left without another word. That night, my brother sent a message. If they force the sale, we lose the house. I stared at the screen. Force the sale. The words felt unreal. You shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours, I typed back. He responded immediately. You're heartless. I set the phone down. Because for the first time, I could see the full picture. They had never expected consequences. They had expected forgiveness on credit. They had built their lives assuming my boundaries were optional. The discovery process began the following week, and with it something else surfaced. Transfers I had never been told about. Accounts I had never known existed. A pattern of moving money quietly between family members. My money hadn't just bought a house. It had been the glue holding their lives together. And now that glue was dissolving. Discovery is where stories die. Not the dramatic ones people tell themselves. The quiet ones they rely on to sleep at night. The kind that say this was complicated or everyone benefited or no one really got hurt. Those stories don't survive spreadsheets. They don't survive timestamps. They don't survive the cold precision of bank records laid out in sequence. My lawyer sent me the first batch on a Tuesday morning. I opened the file at my desk, heart pounding, then closed my office door and sat very still. There it was, a map of choices made without me. Transfers from the account I funded into my mother's personal account. From there, partial amounts routed to my brother, others diverted elsewhere. A payment to cover my father's failed investment. Another to settle a private debt I'd never heard of. The money hadn't just been taken. It had been spent like a shared resource, like it belonged to the family, not to me. I scrolled slowly, my chest tightening with each line item. Dates jumped out at me, the same weeks I had called my mother anxious about rising rent. The same months I had postponed looking at houses because she told me it wasn't the right time. She hadn't lied to protect me. She had lied to protect liquidity. At lunch, my hands were still shaking. I didn't eat. I walked instead, letting the noise of the city drown out the hum building in my head. By the time I returned to my desk, there was a message from my brother. They're digging through everything. You're ruining Mom. I typed once, then deleted it. Then typed again. She ruined herself. I didn't send it. That evening, my lawyer called. They're panicking, she said. Your mother's attorney is trying to slow the process. Your father's is asking for extensions. Why, I asked. Because the paper trail isn't clean, she replied, and they know it. For the first time since this started, I felt something like power. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that comes from understanding leverage. What happens next, I asked. We push, she said, and we prepare for mediation. Mediation, I repeated. So they can explain? So they can negotiate, she corrected, which means they know they can't deny. The word negotiate made my stomach churn. I didn't want a deal. I wanted acknowledgement. That night my father called. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. You've gone too far, he said without greeting. I leaned against my kitchen counter. You've said that my entire life. You're exposing private family matters, he snapped. You made them financial, I replied. He exhaled sharply. You think you're innocent in this? I didn't touch the money, I said. That helps. You trusted your mother blindly, he said. That was foolish. I closed my eyes. You're blaming me for being stolen from... I'm saying you should have known better, he replied. Something in me hardened. You didn't just take my money, I said. You took advantage of the version of me that still believed you wouldn't." He was silent for a beat. "Then what do you want?" The same question my mother had asked, as if this were a negotiation between equals, not a reckoning. "I want everything returned," I said, "with records, with accountability." "That's impossible," he said flatly. "Then we let the process continue," I replied. "You'll destroy your brother," he said. I thought of the house, the one built on my savings, the one they were terrified of losing. "He built that on theft," I said, "not me." He hung up. The mediation date was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, the cracks widened. My mother sent long emails late at night. Apologies tangled with excuses, promises that shifted by paragraph. She alternated between remorse and resentment, unable to settle on which one served her better. My brother stopped contacting me altogether. At work, something unexpected happened. I was offered a promotion. Not a consolation, not sympathy. A real one. My manager sat across from me, hands folded. "You've been performing at a higher level for a while," she said. "We should have done this sooner." I smiled. "I'm ready." And I was. That night I celebrated alone. Not because I was lonely, because I needed to mark the moment without anyone else rewriting it. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window looking out at the city I had paid my way through inch by inch. For the first time, my future didn't feel theoretical. It felt earned. 2 days later, my lawyer forwarded me something else. An internal email chain between my parents and my brother. They had discussed how to tell me, whether to wait, whether I would notice. One line stood out. "She'll be upset, but she always gets over things." I stared at the sentence for a long time. They hadn't just underestimated my anger. They had underestimated my memory. The mediation loomed ahead like a storm, and I realized then that this wasn't just about recovering money. It was about rewriting the role they had cast me in without my consent. The reliable one, the forgiving one, the one who absorbs loss so others don't have to. That role was over. And they were about to find out what happens when the person holding everything together finally lets go. Mediation strips away illusion. There is no raised voice, no slammed doors, just a long table, legal pads, neutral walls, and the slow, methodical dismantling of whatever story people have been telling themselves to survive. The morning of the mediation, I arrived early. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to sit with the feeling before anyone tried to distort it. I wore a simple jacket, hair pulled back, nothing that suggested aggression or apology. My lawyer arrived minutes later, calm, prepared, grounded. "They're already here," she said quietly. I nodded. When my family entered the room, I barely recognized them. My mother looked brittle, like someone holding herself together through sheer will. My father was stiff jaw-locked eyes scanning the room as if searching for an advantage. My brother sat slightly apart, shoulders hunched, gaze fixed on the table. No one met my eyes. The mediator began with procedure, neutrality, ground rules, the illusion that everyone here had equal footing. Then my lawyer spoke. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She simply laid out the facts, the transfers, the dates, the admissions, the paper trail. I watched my mother flinch when the numbers were read aloud. $200,000. Not as a vague concept, as a sequence of deliberate actions. When it was my mother's turn to speak, she cried. "I was trying to keep the family afloat," she said. "I never thought she would take it this far." The mediator nodded sympathetically. I said nothing. Then my father spoke. "She was holding the money," he said. "There was no formal agreement." My lawyer slid a printed message across the table. "For safekeeping, for my future home." The room went quiet. My brother finally spoke. "I didn't ask for all of it," he said quickly. "I thought Mom had permission." I turned to him for the first time that morning. "You never asked me," I said. He swallowed. "I didn't want to." That honesty landed harder than any lie. The mediator asked me if I wanted to respond. I looked at my family, really looked. This was the moment they expected emotion. Tears, bargaining, guilt. They had no idea who I was anymore. "I'm not here to punish anyone," I said evenly. "I'm here to correct what was taken." My mother shook her head. "We can't pay it back all at once." My lawyer spoke before I could. "Then assets will need to be liquidated." My brother's head snapped up. "The house." "Yes," my lawyer replied, "if necessary." My brother turned toward my mother, panic flashing across his face. "You said this wouldn't happen." She looked away. That was when I understood something crucial. She had told him I wouldn't follow through. The mediation ended without resolution. That alone told me everything. In the weeks that followed, the pressure intensified. My parents' attorneys filed motions. Delays, requests, attempts to reframe intent. My brother tried to refinance, failed, tried again, failed again. The house, it turned out, had been purchased at the edge of what they could afford, built on money that was never theirs. My mother called me late one night. "I can't sleep," she said. "Your father is furious." "I imagine he is," I replied. You don't understand, she whispered. He's blaming me. I closed my eyes. You made the choice, I said, but he benefited from it. Silence. I raised you, she said finally. I sacrificed for you. So did I replied, and you spent that sacrifice. She cried again. I felt nothing. At work, my promotion became official. New responsibilities, new salary. For the first time, my future felt stable in a way it never had before. I started looking at houses. Not because I could buy yet, but because I could imagine it again. That shift mattered. 2 months after mediation, the notice arrived. Foreclosure proceedings had begun on my brother's house. He showed up at my apartment that night. He looked broken. They're taking it, he said, everything. I leaned against the doorframe. I didn't take it. Reality did. You could stop this, he said. Tell them to settle. I offered settlement, I replied. You refused. He looked up at me, eyes red. Mom said you wouldn't go this far. I nodded. That was her mistake. He sank onto the floor, hands in his hair. Where are we supposed to go? I paused. This was the moment they had counted on. The moment where my empathy would override my boundaries. I chose carefully. I'm not your safety net, I said. I never was. He looked up at me like I had struck him. I hadn't. I had simply stopped cushioning the fall. After he left, I stood alone in my apartment and felt the full weight of what was happening. This was revenge, not the loud kind, the inevitable kind, the kind that arrives when accountability finally replaces entitlement. And it wasn't over yet, because the money was still gone. And the law does not care about family narratives. The foreclosure notice made everything real in a way words never could. Up until that point, my family had still been living inside a story where things would work out, where someone would step in, where consequences would soften because blood was involved. The law does not participate in stories. It operates on records, deadlines, and math. My brother stopped answering calls after that night. I heard through my mother that he and his wife were fighting constantly. Boxes appeared in the garage. A for sale sign went up in the yard before the bank even finalized the process. My mother called me every other day. Sometimes she begged, sometimes she blamed, sometimes she tried to sound reasonable. If you just accept half, she said once, we could make this stop. Half of what was stolen doesn't make me whole, I replied. You're being rigid, she snapped. I'm being consistent, I said. You're just not used to that from me. That silenced her. At work, my life continued forward in a way that felt almost surreal. Meetings, deadlines, a new office, people asking my opinion and waiting for the answer. One afternoon, my manager stopped by my desk. You okay? She asked. You've got a lot going on. I nodded. I've never been clearer. And it was true. The chaos wasn't inside me anymore. It was outside where it belonged. 2 weeks later, my lawyer called with an update. They're requesting a second mediation, she said. Why now? I asked. Because the house isn't the only asset exposed, she replied. We found retirement accounts. My stomach tightened. Whose? Your parents, she said. They moved funds around to avoid scrutiny. That complicates things. Meaning, she said carefully, that your mother is no longer the only one at risk. That night, my father showed up at my apartment for the first time in my adult life. He stood in the hallway, coat still on, eyes hard. You've humiliated us, he said. I didn't invite him in. You took my money, I replied. We gave you everything growing up, he snapped. You gave me rules, I said, not protection. His jaw tightened. Your brother is losing his home. He bought it with stolen funds, I said. He stepped closer. You're enjoying this. I met his gaze. I'm enduring it. You could stop this, he said. You could make one call. And you could admit what you did, I replied. You won't. He stared at me, searching for the version of me that would fold. He didn't find her. You think you're better than us now, he said. No, I said, I think I finally see you. He left without another word. The second mediation was scheduled quickly. This time my parents came prepared. They brought spreadsheets, proposals, emotional statements dressed up as solutions. They offered partial repayment over time, no interest, no admission of wrongdoing. My lawyer slid the proposal back across the table. No, she said. The mediator turned to me. Are you sure? I nodded, I'm sure. My mother burst into tears. You're destroying your brother's children, she cried. I leaned forward. You gambled their stability when you took my money. Silence fell heavy over the room. That was the moment the narrative shifted. Not because I raised my voice, because I didn't. The mediation ended with a court date scheduled. As we walked out, my brother caught up to me in the hallway. This wasn't supposed to happen, he said quietly. No, I replied. It wasn't supposed to be discovered. He flinched. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about everything I had been taught growing up. Be understanding, be flexible, don't make waves. Those rules had only ever applied to me. I opened my laptop and reviewed my finances again. My promotion had changed things, slowly, steadily. I wasn't whole yet, but I was no longer bleeding. The court date loomed ahead like a line I had never imagined crossing. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of it. Because whatever happened next, I would no longer be the person who paid for peace with silence. Court does not feel dramatic when you're inside it. It feels slow, methodical, uninterested in emotions unless they can be proven. The morning of the hearing, I sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, hands folded in my lap, listening to the muffled echoes of other lives unraveling behind closed doors. Divorces, bankruptcies, custody disputes. Everyone there thought their pain was unique. It rarely is. My parents arrived together. My brother came separately. He didn't sit near them. That was new. When we were called in, no one looked at me. The judge reviewed the filings with a neutral expression, flipping through pages like they were grocery receipts. Transfers, testimony, the mediation breakdown, discovery findings. When my mother was asked to speak, her voice trembled. "I never intended harm," she said. "I was acting as a mother." The judge didn't look up. "Intent does not override obligation," she replied. That sentence felt like oxygen. My father tried next. He spoke about family unity, about sacrifice, about how I was strong and independent and didn't need the money as urgently as my brother. The judge finally looked up then. "Strength does not forfeit rights," she said. I didn't react. I didn't need to. The law was doing what my family never had, acknowledging me. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. "I trusted my mother because she asked me to," I said. "I delayed my life because she told me to wait. I believed my brother wouldn't take what wasn't his. Every one of those beliefs cost me." I paused. "I'm not asking for punishment," I continued. "I'm asking for restoration." The judge nodded. 2 hours later, the ruling was issued. Full restitution ordered. Assets subject to liquidation. Structured repayment enforced by the court. My mother sobbed openly. My father went rigid. My brother stared straight ahead. I felt nothing. Not relief, not joy. Just finality. Outside the courthouse, my brother caught up to me. "You won," he said flatly. "No," I replied. "I survived." He shook his head. "They're selling everything." "I didn't choose that," I said. "They did." He hesitated. "I didn't think it would end like this." "It always ends like this," I said quietly, "when people take what doesn't belong to them." That night, my mother called again. "They're taking the retirement," she whispered. "We'll have nothing left." I closed my eyes. "You had something," I said. "You just spent it." "You don't understand what it's like to start over at our age," she cried. I exhaled slowly. "You didn't understand what it was like for me to never start at all." Silence. "I'm still your mother," she said weakly. "And I'm still your daughter," I replied. "That's why this hurts, not why it's wrong." She hung up. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread quietly. My brother's house sold below value. My parents downsized dramatically. Family friends stopped calling. Not because they were angry, because the story had changed. At work, my promotion continued to open doors. I was asked to lead a project I would never have been considered for before. I accepted without hesitation. Confidence had replaced apology. One evening, I sat in my apartment lease renewal notice still on the counter and opened my savings app. The restitution timeline was clear, slow, structured, real. It wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it would fix what mattered. Trust in myself. My brother sent one last message. "I don't know who we are without you holding things together." I typed back carefully. "That was never my job." I set the phone down because something else had shifted now. I was no longer reacting. I was choosing. And the next choice would matter more than any ruling. Because revenge, I was learning, isn't about watching others fall. It's about refusing to kneel again once you've stood up. And I was standing. The restitution didn't arrive all at once. It came in measured pieces like a clock finally keeping honest time. The first payment landed in my account on a quiet Tuesday morning. No fanfare, no apology attached. Just a transfer confirmation with a court reference number. I stared at it longer than I expected to. $200,000 had once felt abstract. A future idea, a finish line I kept postponing. Seeing even a portion of it return felt different. It wasn't victory. It was correction. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even my mother, who would have interpreted silence as cruelty and acknowledgement as permission. Instead, I made a list. Not of things I would buy, of things I would never tolerate again. At work, something subtle shifted. I spoke with less hesitation. I said no without explaining myself. I stopped volunteering to absorb tasks no one else wanted. People adjusted. They always do when you stop offering yourself as a solution. One afternoon, my manager stopped me in the hallway. "You've changed," she said. I stopped pretending, I replied. She smiled. "Good." That night, I toured my first house. Not a mansion, not a dream home, just a modest place in a quiet neighborhood with enough light and enough space to imagine a future without bargaining for it. I stood in the empty living room and let myself feel something I hadn't allowed in years. hope. The second payment came a month later. My mother didn't call. Instead, she sent an email. I don't recognize my life anymore. I read it once, then closed it. Change feels like loss when you've built your identity on entitlement. My brother called instead. They're moving again, he said, smaller. I said nothing. You don't care, he accused. I care, I replied. I just don't fix. He exhaled sharply. I don't know how to be an adult without backup. That's the point, I said. He hung up. For the first time, I didn't replay the conversation afterward. That silence was progress. As spring approached, I signed a new lease. Short-term, flexible, with the option to buy later. I wasn't rushing. The difference between desperation and intention is time. One evening, my lawyer called to tell me the repayment schedule was ahead of plan. They're liquidating faster than expected, she said. They want this done. So do I replied. You handled this well, she added. Most people crumble. I did crumble, I said. I just didn't stay there. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home. But in the dream, the rooms were empty. No voices, no tension, just space. I woke without fear. My mother called a week later. I found some of your old things, she said. School papers, photos. I waited. I didn't know you kept so much to yourself, she said softly. I didn't know I was allowed not to, I replied. She was quiet. I wish I could go back, she said. So do I said. But for different reasons. She sighed. Do you hate me? I considered the question honestly. No, I said, but I don't excuse you anymore. That distinction mattered. The third payment arrived in early summer. I scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor. Not because I was afraid of losing the money, because I wanted to use it deliberately. We talked about options, timelines, boundaries. I've never seen someone approach restitution like this, he said. How so? You're not trying to replace what was lost, he said. You're trying to redefine it. I nodded. I already lost too much time. That weekend, I hosted dinner for friends. Real friends. The kind who brought food without asking if it was enough. The kind who stayed late without needing reassurance. As I stood in my kitchen serving dishes freely, I felt a familiar ache in my chest. Then I realized it wasn't pain. It was release. My phone buzzed once during the evening. A message from my father. We never thought you'd do this, I typed back slowly. You never thought I'd choose myself. I put the phone down and returned to the table. Because something had become very clear. Justice had addressed the money. But healing was addressing something else entirely. And the final step wasn't behind me. It was ahead. The hardest part of rebuilding isn't the logistics. It's learning how to live without bracing for the next betrayal. By the time the fourth restitution payment arrived, I had stopped checking my account compulsively. The money no longer felt like a lifeline. It felt like something returning to its rightful place after being lost in the wrong hands. I didn't celebrate it. I integrated it. That difference mattered. I spent my evenings differently now. Not scrolling, not numbing out, not replaying conversations in my head. I read, I cooked. I took long walks without headphones, letting my thoughts move at their own pace. Silence no longer felt dangerous. One afternoon, my manager asked me to join her for coffee. You've been handling leadership responsibilities naturally, she said. I want to talk about a longer-term track. The old version of me would have deflected, asked if she was sure, promised to work harder. Instead, I asked questions. Real ones. Scope, authority, boundaries. She answered them seriously. I left the cafe with a sense of gravity I hadn't felt before. Not pressure, weight, the kind that comes with being trusted. That night, my mother called again. I heard you might buy a house, she said carefully. I might, I replied. You could have done that before, she said. If you'd asked us for help. I closed my eyes. I did ask, I said. You just didn't hear it that way. She sighed. I wish I could fix things. You're not broken, I replied. Your choices were. She was quiet. I don't know who I am without managing everyone, she said. That's not my job to answer, I said gently. She didn't argue. That was new. My brother stopped contacting me entirely. I heard through relatives that he had taken a job far below what he once considered acceptable, that his marriage was strained, that he blamed me in some versions of the story and himself in others. Growth is rarely linear. I didn't intervene. For the first time, I understood that distance was not cruelty. It was clarity. One weekend, I visited a small open house again, the same one I'd toured before. The realtor remembered me. You came back, she said, smiling. I wanted to see if it still felt right, I replied. It did. Not because it was perfect, because it didn't require permission. I made an offer 2 weeks later. When it was accepted, I sat in my car afterward and cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, because for the first time in my life, something significant had happened without anyone trying to take it from me. I told my mother via text, I bought a house. She responded a few minutes later, I hope it brings you peace. It was the closest she'd come to blessing something without attaching herself to it. That night, my father sent a message. You got what you wanted. I stared at it, then replied, I got what was mine. No response came back. The fifth restitution payment arrived shortly after. I didn't look at the amount. I looked at the date. Progress measured in consistency, not drama. At work, I was officially offered the role we had discussed. Higher responsibility, more visibility, more authority. I accepted, not because I wanted to prove anything, because I trusted myself to handle it. That trust was new. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. I ran into my father at a grocery store. Of all places, he looked older, smaller. The certainty he once carried no longer preceded him into rooms. He saw me and hesitated, then approached. So he said, You're doing well. Yes, I replied. He nodded. We didn't think you'd go this far. I looked at him calmly. You never thought I'd stop. He swallowed. We thought family would be enough. For you, I said. It always was. He had no answer. As I walked away, I felt no triumph, only distance. And distance, I was learning, can be merciful. That night, I sat alone in my new living room boxes, still unpacked, walls bare, and felt something settle inside me. Not closure, alignment. My life finally reflected the boundaries I had always needed, but never enforced. And there was only one chapter left. Not about them, about me. The house didn't feel like mine at first. It felt quiet in a way that made me alert, as if I were waiting for someone to walk in and tell me I didn't belong there. Old instincts don't disappear just because circumstances change. They linger, checking the exits. I slept on a mattress on the floor the first week. Not because I had to, because I wanted to feel the space before I filled it. I wanted to learn the sounds of the house, the way the pipes knocked in the morning, the way sunlight hit the kitchen counter in the afternoon, the way silence settled at night without tension riding on it. No one had a key but me. That mattered more than I expected. The sixth restitution payment arrived on a Friday. I transferred it immediately into a separate account labeled Simply Future, not because I needed the money to feel secure, but because I wanted to see it accumulate without fear attached to it. Money, I was learning, changes, meaning depending on who controls it. At work, my new role came with its own adjustments. People deferred to me now, asked instead of assumed. I caught myself almost apologizing out of habit, then stopping mid-sentence. No explanation required. One afternoon, I overheard two coworkers talking in the break room. She's tough, one said, but fair. I smiled to myself. That used to scare me. Now it felt accurate. My mother visited the house once, carefully, like a guest. She stood in the doorway, hands folded, eyes scanning the walls as if looking for evidence of something she had lost. It's nice, she said. It's peaceful, I replied. She nodded slowly. You always liked quiet. I liked safety, I corrected gently. She winced but didn't argue. We sat at the kitchen table. No drama, no accusations, just two adults navigating the consequences of a past that could no longer be undone. I've been thinking a lot, she said, about how much I asked of you without asking. I waited. I thought love meant sacrifice, she continued. I didn't realize I was only asking it from one side. That acknowledgement mattered, not because it fixed anything, because it was real. I don't know how to make it right, she said. You don't, I replied. You respect what's different now. She nodded. That was enough. My brother didn't come. I heard from a cousin that he was staying with friends, that he talked about starting over, that he was angry and ashamed in equal measure. I wished him clarity. I did not reach out. The final restitution payment arrived at the end of summer. I recognized the amount immediately. Completion. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the confirmation screen longer than necessary. This was the end of a transaction, not the end of a story. I called my lawyer to thank her. You handled this with more restraint than most, she said. That's rare. I had practice, I replied. That night, I cooked dinner in my own kitchen. Nothing elaborate, something warm and filling. I ate slowly without distraction, without the sense that I needed to leave room for someone else. Halfway through the meal, I paused. This was the first time I had ever eaten in a space that was entirely mine. No hierarchy, no negotiation, no silent expectations, just nourishment. My phone buzzed once. A message from my brother. I don't know how to talk to you anymore. I stared at the screen. Then I typed, You can start by not asking me to carry what isn't mine. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. He didn't reply. That was okay. Some bridges need time before they can even be considered. Later, as I washed dishes, I thought about revenge. How people imagine it as something sharp and satisfying. A moment. A victory. What I felt wasn't that. It was steadiness. The kind that comes when you stop performing survival for an audience that never applauded anyway. I went to bed that night in my own house, under my own roof, knowing that whatever came next would be built on consent, not obligation. There was only one chapter left, and it had nothing to do with money, only meaning. The last thing to change was my definition of family, not the people themselves, the meaning I had assigned to them. The obligation I once believed was permanent, unquestionable, and mine alone to maintain. Autumn arrived quietly. Leaves gathered along the sidewalk outside my house, unbothered by who owned what or who owed whom. Life kept moving without consulting old agreements. I settled into routines that felt almost unfamiliar in their simplicity. Morning coffee on the back step. Evenings spent reading instead of rehearsing conversations that would never happen. Weekends that belonged to me, not to emergencies that were never actually mine. I didn't talk about the case anymore. Not because I was hiding it, because it no longer defined me. At work, I was asked to mentor someone new. A woman not much younger than me, sharp and capable, but constantly apologizing for taking up space. One afternoon, she hesitated before asking a question. "Can I ask something personal?" she said. I nodded. "How did you learn to be so steady?" I thought about it for a moment. "I stopped confusing endurance with virtue," I said. She smiled like that answer landed somewhere deep. That night I thought about how many years I had spent believing that love was proven by what you tolerated, how many times I had stayed quiet to avoid being called difficult, ungrateful, dramatic. The dinner where my mother confessed what she had done played in my memory again, but differently now. I no longer saw myself frozen in shock. I saw a turning point, not because of the money, because of the moment I realized that my life was being negotiated without my consent. My mother and I spoke occasionally, briefly, cordially. She didn't ask about my finances anymore. She didn't offer advice I hadn't requested. Boundaries had taught her what pleading never did. My father stopped contacting me entirely. I heard through relatives that he framed the outcome as unfortunate but inevitable, a story where no one was truly responsible. I no longer needed him to understand. My brother sent a final message one evening, months after the last payment cleared. "I'm trying to rebuild. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know." I read it twice. Then I replied, "I hope you do, for real this time." That was all. No reconciliation, no speech, no promise. Just truth without hooks. On the anniversary of the dinner that started everything, I hosted a small gathering in my home. Friends, laughter, food that no one counted or guarded. At one point, someone hesitated before taking the last serving. "Does anyone else want this?" she asked. I smiled. "There's more," I said. "And even if there wasn't, you don't have to earn it." The table relaxed. Plates moved freely. Conversation flowed. That was when I understood the real ending of this story. Not the court ruling, not the repayments, not the house or the promotion. The ending was this. I no longer measured my worth by what I gave up to keep others comfortable. The revenge was not watching them lose. It was watching myself stop shrinking. If you're hearing this story and something in it feels familiar, if you've ever trusted someone with your future, only to be told later that you were unreasonable for wanting it back, hear this clearly. You are not selfish for wanting what is yours. You are not cruel for enforcing boundaries. You are not disloyal for choosing yourself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop paying for love with silence. If this story resonated with you, if it reflected something you've lived or something you're still navigating, I invite you to stay.
Like a comment, subscribe.
Not because you owe anyone your attention, but because stories like this remind us that dignity is not inherited. It is claimed.